I don't see Bitcoin as a threat to anybody. I think it's a solution for everybody. I think it's a solution for every individual, every institution, every nation state, every central bank, every banking bloodline. Like, we all have the same economic issue, and nobody wants to be on the receiving end of unfair trade. When we print dollars and send them to other parts of the world and trade those dollars for goods and services, there's an imbalance in that trade. Dollars didn't take any energy to produce, but we're trading for goods or services that do take energy to produce. If you want Bitcoin, you have to buy it, or you have to mine it, or you have to trade with somebody who has it. You can't just arbitrarily print it. You can't kill somebody and get it. If we're stacking sats instead of, figuring out how I could buy another duplex to go rent that out, like, that is good for all of our civilization, right? Because we're not hoarding houses now. We're hoarding this invisible, finite, scarce, inviolable form of property.
Eric V. Stacks, mate, bloody hell, it's great to see you again. How you doing?
Doing really well, man. Stoked to see you too. It's been a minute.
It's been a while. Super grateful, super blessed. That saying, I think it was last year that you're really pushing that. And every day I'm outside and I'm just like super grateful, super blessed, and you pop into my mind. I absolutely love it. There's so much I want to cover. But you're very happy to go down like the psychedelic spiritual side of Bitcoin and that deep spiritual journey that hard money and sound money leads us to. But before we sort of dive down those rabbit holes, what are your thoughts about Josh Mandel, 170 days out, guessing the Bitcoin price, predicting the Bitcoin price, like whatever? Now people are saying like $444,000 is in play because this guy on the internet chose 84,000 on the dot for the close, although Bitcoin trades 24/7. What are your thoughts?
I don't even know what to think about that. There's definitely something, maybe a little metaphysical going on there. I don't know. It definitely is. It was a hell of a call to catch that. And it seemed that as he was getting closer, as the day came, there were people who were like tweeting like, hey, you nailed it. And he's like, no. It has to be like at the close of the day within $1 or whatever. That's mind-blowing, though. That is definitely mind-blowing. And then his poems, like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, you read the tweets and it is, it's a trip. It's definitely a trip. I think 440 by the end of the year is entirely possible, with the multiplier, the price is set at the margin. I'm a little bit surprised that the ETFs and strategy now, formerly MicroStrategy, have bought so many coins. There's part of me that's like, where are all these coins coming from? How many are available on exchanges? Like, I don't really know much about how all that works. But I do know that the incentive to get the Bitcoin is really, really high. The political environment is super friendly. I believe that we're going to have a lot of people, like that tsunami of capital should be here. I think these individuals are waking up, figuring it out. The price prediction, though, I kind of don't get too excited about price predictions, but this guy nailed one, and that is quite impressive for sure.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I don't know if there's just 7 billion people in the world, and this guy just got lucky by throwing a dart or whatever. But like you're saying, when you look at his posts and other people have gone through his posts, and the numbers like 3, 6, and 9 keep coming up, and 3, 6, and 9 have been baked into Bitcoin's history. And what I find really interesting about that is Nikola Tesla is like, if you want to understand the universe, understand the numbers 3, 6, and 9 and vibration frequency and whatever the third one is, energy. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Which is, it's so bizarre. So I guess we'll see $444,000 in play. 100% I believe it's possible. For everyone watching though, not financial advice, and the Bitcoin price will do what it does. While we're talking about the Bitcoin price for a moment, because I'm not much of a fan of price predictions or anything either, what do you think? Like when people are new to the space, they saw Bitcoin at 109,000, now it's at 82,126, time of recording, block height 888,381, sats per USD 1,218, subsidy 3.125. So we're at 82,000. We're at 109,000. People are coming into the space like, oh, it's so dead. Peter Schiff is saying it's so dead. This is the bubble that's popped. This is the final thing. You're like, okay, like we've heard this all before. But new people coming into the space, of course, like all of us, we start with, we want to get fiat rich. We want number to go up. But what do you think more about it? Because it's at 82,000. Maybe at the end of the year, it's 440,000. Maybe it's only 120,000. Maybe it's $1 million. But is it important for somebody coming into the space, or what's more important than the price?
Well, I think the price is important, but I'm sure you can relate to this. What I've experienced at this point is like, I feel like with a high level of probability, you could even say with a certain level of certainty, Bitcoin should appreciate at a faster rate than everything else, because we're making less Bitcoin than we're making more of everything else, right? With the stock to flow ratio, Bitcoin's now the hardest asset on planet Earth. So based upon the fundamentals, there's nowhere better to put the money. You know, I really like the saying that Bitcoin's the final trade. Like, I'm not going to sell my Bitcoin for Apple stock or an apartment building or some gold. So the price matters, but at the same time, the fundamentals there, as long as it continues to appreciate at faster than, I don't know, 10, 15%, like all of the other traditional investments would, right? You got S&Ps and, appreciating at 10% a year on average. The debasement of the currency is like 9%, 10% a year. So that's your hurdle rate. So you need to have at least that. And Bitcoin historically has been, I mean, what are we at now? It's like 45, 50% a year is the CAGR for Bitcoin. So like it's
about
appreciating.
55%.
Yeah, 55%. So just based upon the appreciation historically and the fundamentals, and then the need for like an asset like Bitcoin specifically for capital preservation, like there's nowhere better to put the money. So I care about the price, but I don't get too wrapped up in the moonshot, romantic idea that a lot of people do. And I think that's alluring. I think about it, I'll be honest. I'm like, oh, when's $1 million Bitcoin going to come? Like, how does that change things for me, right? Like, then that's that innate need to serve your self-interest. But the fundamentals is this thing's appreciating at a faster rate than everything else, right? And like, you could catch a 1,000x on some meme coin or something, but that's a trade. You have to exit that position. I kind of think about it like, you could rip through traffic, changing lanes, and you can get ahead, kind of, maybe, right? But like, that's really energy dilutive. You're paying attention to things that, in my humble opinion, are I don't know, don't have any real value. So the price is important, but I don't get too wrapped up on the price predictions. When people people start talking about price predictions, I almost tune them out because no one knows. Like, we've never had a scarcity. Like, this is a first for our civilization, as far as we know. We've never been in a economic environment like we have today. And then interstage left comes this scarcity, this immutable ledger. So the need for Bitcoin is extremely high. And the incentive is, as far as I can tell, higher than ever for people to figure it out. So price is important, but I don't get too wrapped up in it.
Yeah. When you said like Bitcoin's more important now than ever before we hit record, I was watching a video by Ursula from the European Central Bank, talking about how great the CBDCs are that they've been working on for the last 5.5 years, and they're coming out October 2025. And that's, for me, that's absolutely scary. That's absolutely terrifying. And I believe Bitcoin is that only scapegoat. Do you have any thoughts in regards to like the European Central Bank bringing out CBDCs and this move towards central bank CBDCs, and then how Bitcoin differs between the two?
Yeah, I've thought about that a bit. I think that the need to violate privacy rights in the form of like a CBDC, so they can just monitor every transaction, is so that they can tax you. And the need to tax you, in my opinion, is based upon fiscal irresponsibility, right? Like, the government is misallocating capital, so they need to figure out how to increase that tax pool or continue that revenue stream. And the government has two ways to fund themselves. You could debase the currency and print money, or print currency, or you can tax your people. If you tax them too much, that's a problem. people start to push back. They want to figure out how to get around the taxes. And then if you debase the currency too fast, you have too much inflation. So there seems to be this back and forth game. Now, long term, as Bitcoin hits the balance sheet of the nation state and the central banks, I believe that the need to violate the privacy rights will decrease, because then their need to violate your property rights should also decrease. In some sense, it's like, Satoshi, like when he released the white paper, it was like the big bailout. Like the big bailout in 2008 in the States wasn't shit. Like Satoshi really bailed us out from a real problem that we had, and that we didn't have a way to preserve capital and send it into the future. And I think that, when I say that Bitcoin is more important now than it's ever been, I'm kind of speaking to the reality that with technological advancement and human innovation and things like AI, it's allowing us to produce more at a faster rate. And the things that we've traditionally held to preserve our economic energy, stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities like gold, we're making more of those. So we're inflating the supply. So as that happens, then that means that we need to then debase the currency faster to keep the system solvent, because the currency is being lent into existence as debt against assets predominantly. But the basket of assets that collateralizes the debt those assets are being inflated. We're diluting the supply of those assets, and we're doing so at an increasingly faster rate, which is like what Jeff Booth speaks to. His work is so profound to me. It's like more innovation, more abundance in goods and services equates more to more monetary debasement, because that basket of assets that collateralize the debt are being increased in supply at a faster rate. So as Bitcoin hits the balance sheet of the individual, the small business, the corporation, the hedge funds, the central banks, the nation state, theoretically, the way I see it, the debasement required to keep the system solvent should decrease. And I think that also leads us to a smooth transition from like this fiat standard that we're on onto a Bitcoin standard. In addition, Bitcoin's an escape valve for the inflation. If they print an insane amount of money, which they obviously have been, and they're going to continue to have to do so, and people put all of that newly minted currency, they store that economic energy as it trickles through the economy into housing, and housing goes up, 100% over a 3-year period of time. That's like a really, really big problem, and that's going to contribute to homelessness. Single families aren't going to be able to afford to buy houses or rent houses. That's a real problem. But if they continue to expand the currency base and Bitcoin goes up 1,000%, 10,000%, or whatever, that doesn't cause any problems for anybody. So it's almost like we have this existential economic crisis, and Bitcoin is a asset to debase the currency against. Like the system, so it's like in 2008, they bailed out the bankers. Then COVID happens, and you got all these PPP loans, right? That are forgivable. It seemed like another vector or another reason to like inject liquidity into the marketplace. And I believe that we're going to end up, and Saylor's been talking about this recently, like you'll be able to borrow against your Bitcoin. I think we'll see things like that really in the near future they got rid of SAB 121, allowing banks now can custody Bitcoin without having to keep the cash equivalent on reserve. So that's like getting rid of some regulatory impedance. And the banking system with fractional reserve lending needs to continue to create fiat. And so Bitcoin is supreme collateral, and it's the perfect thing to print against. But the thing that I think most people, and this is just my opinion, but I think people are overlooking the fact that if they print against Bitcoin and those newly minted dollars, that liquidity, which has to be injected to keep the system solvent, it'll move its way through the marketplace and then back into Bitcoin. So in some sense, it's like Bitcoin's an escape valve for the inflation. So I think for a multitude of reasons, like the timing of everything seems to be quite serendipitous. And it leaves me quite hopeful. I think that we're moving. It's like the timeline almost is speeding up. Like I kind of almost at times can't believe we're here, Like
Dude, it's so
quite
crazy.
shocking.
We're so ahead of schedule.
Yeah, we really are. It's speeding up for sure, seemingly.
100%. Like, you know, for the last couple of years, we've all been talking about nation state adoption, game theory playing out and stuff. But at least for me, I thought it was going to be like the year 2030 when sort of everything went to shit, and there's really like an impetus for nation states to jump on and for it to be happening in 2025. You know, like the strategic Bitcoin reserve that Trump bought in, even though it's executive order, I found out that's not a law, so it can be changed. But like that's absolutely monumental. Just on the lending side of things, I was listening to Mailbag Mondays by Jack Mallers yesterday. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, he's coming out with the lending against Bitcoin, and pretty interesting. Like, people, do your own research. But he's set it up really for himself, so he never needs to sell his Bitcoin. He can just borrow against it, over collateralized. He can roll over the interest back into it, so he doesn't need to pay the interest, and then, you know, a couple of years later refinance and keep doing that. It's so those products are here. You know, it's already available to a beta test group and stuff. And then once the banks start pushing it ahead, like, they'll be watching what Jack's doing, and they'll be like, "Oh, this young kid, he's making all this money. Like, we want a slice of this." And then it's just game theory. And like you're saying, the rules are all in place. Like, what are your thoughts in regards to the like nation states coming in? Like, Bhutan was mining Bitcoin secretly for years. It sounds like North Korea's got 15,000 Bitcoin, I saw the other day. El Salvador is legal tender. They're having issues with the IMF, of course. And then like Trump's SBR. Like, is it a good thing that nations are involved, and is that going to cause manipulation? And is that maybe going to scare people away, because Bitcoin is meant to be that separation of money from state?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think that, you know, Bitcoin's money for your enemies, right? That's one of the sayings within Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I do think it is a little fascinating how a lot of the early adopters of Bitcoin, some of the hardened maxis who paved the way, there's an aversion to the state adopting Bitcoin, but without that transition, you know, like I kind of think long and hard about, and often, almost all the time, really, what does the world look like 100 years from now, 500 years from now? Like, what is this new technology? Because in some sense, Bitcoin is like imposing a new rule set on our civilization. Jeff Booth also, he talks about this. I just love this. It's forcing cooperation. You know, if you want Bitcoin, you have to buy it, or you have to mine it, or you have to trade with somebody who has it. You can't just arbitrarily print it. You can't kill somebody and get it. And so, you know, that's a very, very important thing. And I think it's also very, you know, timely. Like, we need that right now. And then, you know, I want to see the government more fiscally responsible. You know, I'm definitely not a fan of them violating property rights in the form of debasing the currency and then using that economic energy to enforce that banking system around the world and go kill people. You know, it's like we print so that we could go kill and steal. And I have a huge issue with that. Most people do. But so how do we get from this fiat standard that we're on now and this fiat economic paradigm? How do we transition into the new era? Well, I don't think, as much as a lot of people would like to see this, I don't think it's ideal to have some apocalyptic collapse, right? And so in some sense, you know, Bitcoin will bring stability, at least this is the way I see it, stability, and then it'll incentivize fiscal responsibility within the whole. I just kind of look at the whole system as one whole. You know, the central banks are colluding with the governments, vice versa. You have your banking system that's, you know, available to the public, fractional reserve lending, et cetera. So how do you get from that onto a Bitcoin standard? And I kind of feel like what's taking place is the necessary steps to do that in a peaceful and cohesive way. So I'm not particularly a fan per se of it, but I'm not bothered by the fact that nation states are, you know, figuring this out. I also do believe that a lot of important people, you could just say the overlords, if you will, I think that they're grappling with this conundrum, you could say. And right on the other side of like the aversion that an overlord or the overlords or whatever could have to Bitcoin is that like aha moment where Bitcoin, I don't see Bitcoin as a threat to anybody. I think it's a solution for everybody. I think it's a solution for every individual, every institution, every nation state, every central bank, every banking bloodline. Like we all have the same economic issue and nobody wants to be on the receiving end of unfair trade. When we print dollars and send them to other parts of the world and trade those dollars for goods and services, there's an imbalance in that trade. The dollars didn't take any energy to produce, but we're trading for goods or services that do take energy to produce. So nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that. And Bitcoin fundamentally solves that. And the way I see it all playing out, it does seem like things are unfolding in a way that could theoretically allow us to transition in a peaceful way. Because I don't really have, and I'll leave that question with this last thought. If somebody could just press the off button and you stop printing dollars, boop, we're not going to print any more dollars. What would happen is the natural forces that deflation that's created by a free market, as supply satiates demand, prices fall. Like we would see prices start to fall on everything, and then all the debt goes insolvent. People are upside down in their houses. People aren't paying their credit card debts. The whole banking system collapses. Well, you would have an apocalyptic situation. And then on the other side of that, what would happen is people would band together. They would figure out amongst their groups who's the most, sophisticated and ethical and whatever. They would get people, they would put them into positions of power. And those people then would come up with ideas about how, hey, we need to pool capital together, and then we need to allocate that capital to keep the roads good and the water clean and the schools going. So you would reorganize society in a way where you have some sort of governing body anyways. So I think the real issue has been corrupt governments, has been corrupt individuals within the government that are trying to serve their self-interest at the expense of others, or at least serve their self-interest with no concern about the second and third order negative effects that it puts on others. And so just some fiscal responsibility would be really nice, and I think Bitcoin will incentivize that as it becomes a treasury reserve asset and banks start to lend against it. And, I don't know. So that's kind of like a quick snapshot there of the way I think that we should put focus and energy on trying to figure out how we could get from where we are today onto a Bitcoin standard with as little chaos as possible. Because I'm a very compassionate person. I don't like seeing people suffer, right? And so if you just shut fiat off or let the government collapse, I think you would have a lot of problems that I would like to see, avoided if it's possible.
Yeah. Definitely nice for humanity. I guess it's nice to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Say like the worst case scenario does play out, Eric, and they just stop printing money. I don't think that's going to happen anyway. It all collapses and it's pretty chaotic. Do you think through that transition, like while everything's collapsing, people that already hold Bitcoin are going to be okay, or it's everybody's going to suffer, if they're just to pull the pin on the fiat system for a little while before, switching over to better money?
Well, I think everybody would suffer. One of the things that I find kind of fascinating is, it's politicians seemingly treat the government kind of like a rental car. They just get in there and they drive the shit out of it. They beat it up. They figure out how they can get some government contracts, maybe do some insider trading. And they're really doing things that are not good for the people, not good for the government. It's like they get into office, they drive their position like they are a rental car, and they pass it on to the next guy all fucked up and smoking, issues, the tires are all flat, and they're like, all right, well, it's the next guy's problem, And so, and also I will say, I don't think it's possible. It's not even an option to stop printing. I think that they have to continue to print. I think the issue though is how do you stay solvent? How do you keep the system becoming negative, essentially having negative equity on the mass scale, because I kind of think like you have debt and then you have assets that collateralize the debt, and the value of the assets that collateralize the debt needs to be higher than the debt. But those assets were fundamentally in real terms pushing the value down. That's why they're injecting liquidity to prop asset prices up. So I think the option would be a shitload of printing, which also causes a problem, bifurcates society. But once again, we have Bitcoin as an option for store of value or for capital preservation. More and more people with larger pools of capital are figuring that out. And so as people, I don't know, like you and I, if we're stacking sats instead of, I don't know, figuring out how I could buy another duplex to go rent that out, like that is good for all of our civilization, right? Because we're not hoarding houses now. We're hoarding this invisible, finite, scarce, inviolable form of property. So that's important. And I think that's just naturally happening. It's baked into this like interesting incentive vortex, right? And so I don't know, I have a very positive and hopeful outlook on things. The same things that caused the problems that we have in the world today, those same forces that cause people to do things that are bad for other people, are the same forces that are going to drive those individuals into Bitcoin. It's the need to serve your self-interest. But what's so beautiful with Bitcoin is you're simultaneously serving your self-interest and the interest of the collective. And it seems to be that this is a first for humanity. So I don't know.
If you've still got your Bitcoin on an exchange or you're looking to take your Bitcoin security to the next level, I've partnered with the Bitcoin Way. They offer live help for setting up cold storage, running your own node, keeping your Bitcoin private, planning for the future, using multi-sig, and so much more. They never touch your keys. They will not touch your coins. Instead, they'll show you how to buy and keep them safe. If you want to make your Bitcoin setup safer, you can book a free 30-minute call and have a chat with them. Safe Dina Moose, the author of the Bitcoin Standard, Natalie Brunel, Preston Pish, and so many more recommend the professional IT cybersecurity team. Couple of outstanding things here. You can see they've been featured in Forbes, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin Prague, Zero Hedge, Simply Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Safe Dean, the Bitcoin Standard podcast with Safe Dina Moose, Bitcoin News, obviously G'day Bitcoin for a long time. They're the world experts in helping people become self-sovereign. It's not just about protecting your Bitcoin stash. Yes, they will help you do that in a very easy to understand step-by-step process. But from there, they can help you secure your data. They are your personal cybersecurity IT experts. And then step number 3 is getting a second passport, a Plan B residency. The team, very cheap, very affordable for people that are looking to take their sovereignty to the next level. You can find out more about their services. When you first log in to their website as well, they have got a free 3-minute quiz to allow you to check if you are doing your cybersecurity, your setup correctly. I urge everyone to jump onto the bitcoinway.com. I have put a link into the description for everyone. Could not recommend them enough. I've used them personally before I ever partnered with them for the channel, friends and family. They asked me to help them out. I'm like, go to the world experts. That is the Bitcoin Way. So reach out to the Bitcoin Way today. With Bitcoin, like at least for myself, being here 5 years, 2019, it's been an interesting journey, like spiritually, emotionally, physically, and like in every way, it's redefined who I am, how I show up in the world. I'd really be interested to know how going down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin's changed the way that you show up in the world now, perceive the world now to before, if you can remember back. Did you go through like a dramatic change, and has it like shaped, refined your worldview?
Yeah, big time. I've always had a good attitude and been pretty optimistic, but I was kind of grappling with this nihilistic feeling, off and on over the years, where it's just like, fuck, the world just seems so unfair, right? And then it's like, there's that famous saying, like, life isn't fair. Okay, I get it. But what I kind of struggled with is I felt like unethical market participants who are capable of being a little aggressive or greedy within the economy seem to have, market share or an advantage in the marketplace. And I kind of always had this feeling of like, that doesn't, I don't know. There's just got to be a better way. Like maybe I just haven't found the thing, or I'm looking at life wrong or whatever. But it just seemed like the people not everybody who's made a lot of money is unethical. So don't get me wrong there, but there are a lot of people who are unethical who are killing the game, or you're just doing really well. And when I discovered Bitcoin, it was like just this series of aha moments. And the thing that I really initially felt was like the antidote to that nihilistic feeling is like, wait, nobody can co-opt this or corrupt this to serve themselves at the expense of others. Like, well, that's a really big deal. And then being a cannabis producer, I'm a commodity producer effectively, and I had watched the value of the commodity that I had been producing drop, all while my cost of living and operating my business has increased. And I'm thinking, okay, so well, how does that work? Like, okay, well, you scale up, well, that further exacerbates the problem. And then the discovery of Bitcoin made it really clear, like, wait a second, supply will satiate demand. If there's not enough supply for something that there is demand for, then the free market will bid the price up. And as that margin increases, then the economic incentive for entrepreneurs and capital to flow into that sector of the marketplace, produce whatever good or service it is, and satiate that demand with supply, well, that'll bring the price down near the marginal cost of production. Like Jeff Booth says, prices will fall to the marginal cost of production. Wherever there's a margin, there's an incentive to do something. And so I'm looking at Bitcoin and I'm thinking, okay, well, clearly cannabis was easy to produce. People can just, set up shop, build out a facility, produce the product. Well, money, if you have a money that is finite in supply, well, okay, what's the demand for money? Well, it's infinite, because money is a call option on any good or service that the marketplace can produce. So if you could pair infinite demand with true scarcity, like you have the apex asset or apex monetary instrument or property or whatever you want to call it. And so it was just like a series of aha moments. It actually was, the discovery of Bitcoin was the thing that caused me to pivot my business strategy. I realized that I had an existential crisis. This is 2018. I'm pumped. I went through all these regulatory hurdles. I saved a bunch of money. I worked my ass off. I bought this property, and there I am right in the beginning of 2018 when the state of California is issuing licenses for cannabis businesses. And I got this license in my hands. This is a month after I discovered Bitcoin. And I'm like, this is a dream come true moment. That's a real problem. This is an existential crisis. Like this business is it's certainly going to get harder and harder and harder. The value of the product is going to continue to decrease. Scaling up doesn't solve that problem. I have no fiat subsidies. I can't go get a business loan. There's no American ag credit. I got a hard money loan for the portion of the property that I finance, so I don't have like some 3% 30-year fixed. And so I just decided very quickly, like, within a few weeks of having my license, that like, look, I need to sell this property. I need to buy some Bitcoin, and I need to pivot my business strategy to consulting and farm management and consulting services, so that I can at least capitalize on the experience that I have, the knowledge that I have, and the skill set, and that I don't have any of the downside related to the business. The value of the property was tied to the value of the commodity, and the value of the commodity is continuing to decrease. And I think it's only going to get worse for the producers and the people in the cannabis business as more states come online. And if we have federal legalization, you'll be able to, publicly traded companies are going to sell stocks, sell shares on Wall Street. Your everyday American's going to buy some of that because they can't save dollars. They're trying to figure out where they can put their money, some stocks, some real estate, some whatever. So let me try these cannabis business stocks. The cannabis companies are going to use that capital to go build infrastructure. They can leverage that infrastructure in the form of debt. They can sell more shares. They'll have that. They'll be able to drink from that spigot of infinite fiat to run their businesses at a loss and drive the value of the product below the variable cost of production, putting the small farmers who like forge the way out of business so that they can consolidate the industry. So one of the things that I've been doing And it's surprisingly not as effective as I would imagine. I've been trying to speak with the people in my community about how important it is to have a Bitcoin treasury strategy, or to have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or saving Bitcoin, whatever you want to call it. Because if I didn't sell my property and put my money into Bitcoin, and if I kept reinvesting my earnings to expand my cannabis business, like, I'd have a real problem. And so in that sense, economically, Bitcoin has liberated me, I could say. But then there's like a very ideological and spiritual element to Bitcoin, because from a logical and rational perspective, you're evaluating your options as far as things to buy to save your surplus in, right? And there's only so many things. You got real estate, equities, commodities, bonds, fine art. Like, that's kind of it. And so you can look at the world and you think, okay, well, there's only so many things I can buy. This thing's a scarcity. I'm going to buy this thing. And then you're kind of almost like just outsourcing your future, and you're putting your faith into this like monetary protocol that some anonymous Japanese figure created. And then you're just like, kind of like, okay, well, now I'm just going to have faith that everything plays out the way it should. And you still like, I'm still like thinking like, do the fundamentals still stand? But it is this very interesting and powerful, like, relinquishing of control and putting your faith into this protocol, or into just human greed in some sense. It's very powerful. It also, for me, has helped me with a very logical and with logic and reason, see a path to a very beautiful future. And that is like very inspiring. So from a selfish perspective, my economic energy, or my portfolio, or my investments, whatever you want to say, they're going to shred with a high level of probability. It's going to do well. But at the same time, like, that action is also helping to make the world a better place. It's monetizing this new network that other people are going to benefit from being a part of. And yeah, so I mean, there's just so many ways that Bitcoin impacts one's life in a positive way. It's, gives you something to look forward to. It kind of eliminates that nihilistic feeling like, hey, I can forego that instant gratification. I can wait for this stuff. And then like, I've been needing to deal with the thought around like, okay, well, I need to move. I have to transition. I don't want to continue in the cannabis business. What kind of other business endeavors do I want to be involved in? Well, should I move now? Well, if I do, like, I have 100% Bitcoin allocation. So if I'm transitioning out of one line of work and into another, I'm going to have to tap into some Bitcoin. And there's like there's a lot of stickiness with the Bitcoin. The money goes into the Bitcoin, but taking it out is like, whoa, I got to really think long and hard about this.
I struggle so hard with that, bro.
Gosh, yeah. And then for business opportunities, like, Bitcoin's return rate in some sense is like the new hurdle rate. If I'm not going to allocate capital to a business, if I don't think that I can, yield 55% a year on that business endeavor. So it just, I don't know. It does a lot to the individual. It really does. It changes you in a lot of ways. The famous saying, you can't change Bitcoin, so Bitcoin changes you.
Yep. Like, on that note, one of the things you said is like, you're relinquishing control, like you're sort of relinquishing self-control. This is the way I perceive what you're saying, like, over to the Bitcoin network. And like, in a way you're just trusting that there's set rules, no rulers. But also, like, the way I see it, maybe I interpreted that wrong, but the way that I see it is you're also taking back control, because it's the first time in human history where we can truly hold a bearer asset, and it can't be confiscated, it can't be taken away, it can't be debased if you secure it properly. And people like, it has been confiscated, yes, but those people physically had to hand over the keys, or they got taken. Whereas with their house, they can just come, they can possess it, especially money in the bank. They can just take it. They can just put a stop to it. They can block your accounts. Like, I get so many delays. I had a bank shut down for 28 days. No, the bank said, no, you're not allowed to do business with us anymore. With Bitcoin, once you own, you hold it properly, nobody can ever stop it. What I'm going to do for everyone is the Bitcoin way. I've put a link below. There's a 3-minute quiz that you should go through, and it just checks how good your security is. I'll put that link below. But like when you get up towards the higher score of it, you know that you can access your Bitcoin anywhere in the world. And it may not just be like easy as however someone set up is having their security device, their hardware wallet at home, being able to plug in. Because if that's at home, somebody can come around and they can force you at gunpoint or whatever it is to put in the PIN number. So like, yes, you need to make it like a little bit inconvenient, but through thinking about it and going like deep into that rabbit hole, when you put all these structures and stuff in place and then you stop and you think about it and you're like, that saying by John D. Rockefeller, he who controls the money controls the world. Well, like when you do Bitcoin properly, you control your own money so you can control your own world. And I find that like so amazing, man. Like that's like bled over to every area in my life. And sort of what you're saying, it's like thinking about, hey, what do I want to do next? What's of value to myself, to the world, and what's going to be better than investing just in Bitcoin? Like what business should I do? And like I had that experience last year with 2 businesses that lost me money, you know, against Bitcoin. You know, like, hey, like we need to try those. One was like it's like really close to my heart, passion project, and they didn't work. You're like, okay, cool, that's fine. Like I've got my benchmark 55% a year. What can I do to be able to show up and provide immense value to the world or to somebody to be able to outcompete Bitcoin? And I think that changes everything because we're only rewarded for the value that we provide. Or majority, you know, some people can go out, they can be scamming snakes and they can rip people off, but it's not really that long. Like, you know, the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world, Bernie Madoff, that lasted for a while and then he went to jail. So like the better you are as an actor, the more you're going to be rewarded. And I think like Bitcoin like really, really pushes that. But what are your thoughts? Like, it's so funny. Like, I was telling you about it before we went live. I'm no longer doing the daily news. And the reason for that is, number one, it takes up a lot of time, but I spend like 4 to 6 hours on X every day. And once the political cycle came into the news and stuff, it was like watching like mainstream news again. I haven't had a TV apart from this one that shows this picture or the Bitcoin price for like 15 years. And so don't watch the news. I don't get caught up in all that shit. And there's like politics, everything came into Bitcoin. And then there's like the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve are like, oh, this is good. This is going to be amazing for everyone over time. You know, if the dollar does collapse, which it looks like it's just going to continue doing, which it's been doing since 1971. Like there's an out, but then with politics, of course, comes all the noise. So there's like the strategic shitcoin stockpile and things like that coming into the mix. Like I found that really hard, and I prefer to go deep into these conversations. But I guess what I'm getting at is I find it quite funny now that I'm not like immersed in it. I find it interesting to talk about a little bit more instead of being fed it. So on that thread, the signal to noise ratio, I think, is very interesting. I think we're in this balance. Like over the last 4 years, we did a really good job as a community separating Bitcoin from crypto, Bitcoin shitcoins, Bitcoin meme coins. Like they were so separate. And then it seems like pretty quickly the US government like brought those two together, and there's going to be this crypto Bitcoin stockpile reserve type thing. But then like final moment, they separated the two. Do you think that's important that they have done that? And they can't, it looks like they can't sell the Bitcoin, but they can sell the shitcoins. Like I find that absolutely fascinating. I think that was, you know, like to give him credit or whoever's advising him just to separate him. I think that was like a really lucky break. Otherwise it would have hurt a lot of people, because what you were saying earlier is you can make heaps of money off shitcoins and stuff. I did really well, but you don't like learn anything off that. And it's like sick degeneracy gambling, or it's just an investment or whatever, where Bitcoin's money. By separating them, I think that's better. But I'd like to think what your thoughts are on that. Like, was it a good move?
Yeah, I was actually, you know, the whole thing has been slightly confusing. And, you know, I almost, at times I think Trump is more aware of what's happening, you know, than most people think. And that other times I think he doesn't have a clue, but I don't think it matters. I was a little bit concerned with the tweet or post he put out on Truth Social, you know, when he was like, yeah, we're going to have the stock price, Solana, ADA. I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
XRP.
what, like, really? Is this for real? It can't be this, there's just no way. And then I'm like, all right, well, okay, well, maybe we're just going to go into just complete lunacy and degeneracy, like you're saying. Maybe it's just going to be this crazy clown world scenario. So it was quite refreshing to see that the Digital Holdings Act, I think is what it is. I don't know what it's called, but the SBR, they can effectively, they can't sell the Bitcoin. They can figure out in a budget neutral way how to get more Bitcoin. They can sell the shitcoins, the other digital assets, and they're not going to figure out how to acquire more unless it's through seizure. So that was really clear. I mean, I just read those couple paragraphs. It was on some post on Twitter. Somebody had highlighted it, and it's like, okay, they're going to keep the Bitcoin and not sell it. They're going to figure out how to get more Bitcoin. They're not going to figure out how to, you know, get more, I don't know, altcoins, and they can sell those. So it's pretty clear that, you know, we're not going to be going into some crypto mania, and the United States sovereign fund or whatever isn't going to be full of all this nonsense. But I do think Trump is like, he is an absolute master at like pandering to all the crowds. You listen to his speeches and everything's the biggest and best it's ever been. And you couldn't even imagine how amazing it's going to be. And you're going to be so tired of winning. You're going to win so hard. You're going to be so tired of winning. You're not going to want to win anymore. Right. And so he can't come out and be like, look, we're going to get rid of all this garbage. He's like, everything is so amazing and awesome. But if you read it, it's like, okay, cool. Well, they have they have coins, some digital assets, whatever you want to call them, that they seized. They can seize more of them, and they're going to get rid of those. That was quite refreshing. I've had moments of being concerned about like, how's this going to go down, right? But it goes back, like, I can't believe the timeline. Like, things just seem to be accelerating, and like it seems to be playing out like we all thought it would, and maybe in a faster, pace. I wouldn't say I'm lackadaisical. I'm definitely suspicious. But once again, it's like, it almost none of it matters. Like 21 million, that's it. You have this monetary protocol. This thing has no utility value outside of being a money. It's bounded by energy. It's paying our civilization to figure out how to make faster computing chips, how to harness energy more efficiently. Everybody needs a way to save their economic energy. Like it's all just noise. And like when I heard that you weren't doing the daily show anymore, I was like, oh, I bet that like is good for his mental state. Like I get on Twitter sometimes. I'm like, all right, what's happening with Twitter? What about this Josh guy or whatever? And then I just see this garbage in my feed. And like, where attention goes, energy flows. And I do believe from a very spiritual, metaphysical, even quantum, scientific perspective, like the observer, at the very least with the double slit experiment, we know that the observer affects reality. Right. And so I like to focus on the reality that in the future that I want to see. And if you're yelling at clown world all day long and you're thinking about all that stuff, I think it just creates more of that in your world. Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. And I do think about vibration and vibrational frequency and the law of attraction. And I think that the law of attraction is a real thing. Like your vibrational frequency is being mirrored to you in the world around you. And so if you have bad vibes because you're focused on bad stuff, like, I don't know, it seems like that's just a good way to attract more of that. So I try to defund the clown world by effectively and simply not paying attention to it and focus on the things that I want to see. And in some sense, that's what's so special about Bitcoin is it creates this dynamic where it's religious, it's ideological. Like I want to see positive things in the world. Oh, and this thing can make that happen. It's not woo woo and like, oh, some sky daddy is going to just make things better for me in the future. No, it's like, it's real. It's happening. It's math. It's like it's incentives. It's human action. It's like so easy to wrap your mind around. And, Yeah, I mean, that's why I ran around making videos talking about how pumped and grateful I am, because like, look, this is a monumentally big deal. And I've kind of almost softened my need to like orange pill people. I'm like, I don't know, fuck it. Like, it doesn't matter. Everything is going to get better anyways. You get some Bitcoin now, you could get it when it's 10 million. Like, it's ready when you are. Like, it's all good. Like, we're maybe not out of the weeds, but I kind of feel like it's game over. Like, it's done. We're in a new world. I call it the AB world after Bitcoin. You had the BB world, all of known history, where we were limited, to the physicality of property, and paper derivatives become digital derivatives. These central corruptible entities and protocols, technologies, and now we have an incorruptible protocol, and we have scarcity, and I like to think about it as metaphysical property, and it's a different reality. It's Yeah, I think about like this simulation theory. I like simulation theory. The idea that whether it's 5 months from now, 5 years, 5,000 years, 5 million years from now, with the evolution, with human ingenuity and technology, we should be able to it's logical to think that we'll make a virtual reality that is indistinguishable from base reality. If that's the case, then it's not probable that we're in base reality, right? And so if we're in some simulation that like we're projecting ourselves as like, a fractal or a piece of source energy, like experiencing itself, then like it's like the simulation changed in 2009 when Satoshi issued the white paper, released the protocol. It's like Saylor said, he merged the physical world with the digital world. He lit a fire in cyberspace. What I kind of think about that is like he merged the physical world with the metaphysical world. So now we have this invisible instrument that's finite and inviolable, and it can't be taken from you, and I can zip it from me to you and back and forth, and like you kill me, you don't get it. Like, I don't know if enough people spend enough time thinking about how big of a deal that is. Like, you kill me, you can't get my shit? Like, that changes so much about how the world works. Yeah. Anyways, I digress. It's a big deal. I get excited.
Oh, dude, everything about it is absolutely phenomenal. Hey, it's been an absolute pleasure, Eric, to have you on. I'm going to link everything below for people to be able to connect with you, but super grateful, super pumped to have you on the show. And let's not draw this out so long. We'll do it a little bit more often, eh?
Yeah, man, that sounds good. I always enjoy chatting with you, buddy.
Everyone, please do something nice for yourself, for somebody else out there. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. We vibe. Be blessed. Peace.
Peace.